Are you listening?
Up next, we have a fantastic guest. There is a game that is coming out later this year that originally captured my imagination with its multiplayer beta called From Space. Ladies and gentlemen, this week's episode, we are joined by Triangle Studios' Remco de Roij. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much for having us. I'm excited.
Yes, so From Space, top-down twin-stick shooter where you are hunting down aliens that are invading Earth. I know that's a very rudimentary explanation of your game, so can you kind of dive into exactly what the game is?
Yeah, well, it is actually, a lot of it is just that exactly. Shooting pink, brain-hungry aliens that have come from outer space in search of energy crystals. Like, we came up with this weird story, but From Space really is like, it's a co-op game, and it's a game that was designed, and as we say, we want you to be able to play From Space with your friends as well as with your kids. A lot of the guys at the studios are young parents, and we look for games that we can play with our kids, and also when friends come over, you want something cool to play. And our goal was always for From Space to kind of like hit both of those notes, and something that doesn't take itself too serious, but also something that is still like fun and challenging enough so that you can pick it up and play. It has enough depth to it, but without having to spend like 200 hours grinding for the ultimate gear, so to say. And this is what we set out to do. And from the demo, from the feedback we got from that demo, which is now over close to a year old actually. We were back then definitely on the right track. So From Space is coming up really soon, and we're excited to see what everybody thinks.
Yeah, it's a killer game, and I'm glad you mentioned the pink aliens, because from like a visual perspective, it's stunning. Like, you're looking at all the colors, it's kind of like this dark, grungy, gritty world, and then you just got these vibrant neon pink aliens that are just kind of goo. I'm curious, inspiration for the design of the aliens. Did you think about going with the little gray bodies with the big heads, or what led you to the pink guys?
I guess it's way more simple than that. So From Space is actually a reimagination of a game that we released back in 2015, and that game is actually still playable. It's called It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains, and it's if you go back to that game right now, it's like the arcade version. It's just like a hardcore arcade version, not a lot of depth to it, but even that game, it came from an idea that we did during a game jam. So at Triangle Studios, we had sessions where like every couple of months we took a weekend, just did a game jam and try to come up with something cool. And if you really want to get a game together in a short amount of time, you want to build like simple characters, simple enemies. And like, we just extruded a couple of boxes and we had something together in just a couple of minutes, and somehow it just really stuck with us. Like, the simple shapes, they come across well on whether you're playing on a small screen or on a big screen. Coincidentally, like, they're menacing aliens with big teeth, but somehow they're still quite lovable. They're quite endearing and cute, almost. So like, we liked that the enemies were this multifaceted creatures, and we took up the challenge to make them a little bit more versatile in From Space. So you'll see more shapes than just the regular boxy ones. But I still think that you can definitely tell that they all really go together very well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the first game. It Came From Space to Eat Our Brains, because looking back at this game and then seeing what you guys are doing with From Space, it almost seems like it's a proof of concept, if you will. And kind of seeing the evolution and the journey of the game and where it's headed. Can you touch on that a little bit? I mean, how long have you been working on From Space as a game right now?
Yeah, so when we built It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains, the company looked very differently. Like, we basically built that game in between other projects. Like, we were doing primarily co-dev work, which meant that like people would reach out to us, we would build a game for them, and they would go on and release it. The first game really got together in a very short amount of time. We didn't have a full focus of the entire team on the creation of that title, and a couple of years ago we figured that if we almost felt like we weren't realizing our goals as a team. Like, we've been in business for quite a long time, and we've done some great titles, but not a lot of titles that we are very well known for, and this is something that we really wanted to change. So we set out to really say, hey, how about we focus everything on the creation of one title? And actually at first we thought like, okay, we are going to do a fantasy RPG, like basically all of the pitfalls that smaller studios do to overscope and to do something really big. And after we did a prototype for that title, we kind of like realized that, hey, if we want to focus everything on one title and we're going to be burning through a lot of cash very quickly, we need to do something that is close to us. We need to do something that we are already very familiar with. How about we reinvent It Came from Space and Airbrains? Between that moment and when we originally released the game was already a couple of years. So the team had evolved. We had a lot more, like we were able to say we can now commit to an online multiplayer feature. We can do way more depth, way more polished experience. So we felt like, okay, what if we do something that we already are very familiar with that takes away a lot of the pitfalls? And coincidentally, we also felt like we still had something like we never really got to where we wanted to go with the first game. So revisiting it really gave us a chance to build that world, flesh it out, create some cool characters, think about the enemies a little bit more, and just build this whole new experience.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's so cool when you look at the two games side by side, because you can definitely see the similarities and also kind of the evolution of your studio. Not even just from kind of the overall look, but the character design. You know, you're going from block characters to kind of these cool looking, I guess the best way to describe them is like here in America, the A-Team. You know, you got
right.
Barnabas and everything like that. And it's just such a fun world that I can't wait to dive into. And from a gameplay perspective, twin stick shooter, you pick up weapons on the streets. What type of customability is there going to be on the weapons side? Is there 10, 20? What weapons are out there?
There's a ton of weapons for sure. I think that there's between 20 and 30 different weapons in the game. But when you start a new round of From Space, and when you play with your friends, you'll be able to pick one of the available specialists. And each specialist has his own development tree. This is actually a new feature that we haven't shown previously or haven't talked about a lot, but something that we are going to be talking about a lot leading up to the game's release. So these specialists, they all have their specific abilities, things that they're good at. They all have a unique weapon that is different from all of the other weapons that you'll be able to find in the game, and they also have certain perks that you can unlock that set them aside from the other characters. So there's offensive, defensive, and supportive classes that you can pick from, and when you play with a couple of friends, you automatically start to decide, oh, I'm going to take the tanky character, I'm going to be taking on a lot of damage but also inflicting a lot of damage. You'll be standing a little bit further back, you'll be covering me with your sniper rifle, for instance. So you're already thinking about, how do I not just play my own character, but how do we play together as a group, and how do we complement each other to achieve our goals? Compared to It Came from Space and Other Brains, where basically you would start your game with a simple pistol, and at the end of a round you'd have all weapons unlocked. In From Space, you have way more of a character progression that you go through. And by the way, you're completely free to midway through swap to a different character, try different things. You could even play 3 characters in one campaign if you wanted to. Heck, you could all select the same character if you really want to. But yeah, you'll immediately find out that if you overbalance, if you tilt the team too much towards one goal, you'll be ending up short on another end. So it really makes sense to choose some different characters for your squad.
Yeah, that's neat. I mean, it's really starting to sound like, you know, not only can you play this game single player, but with a single player and multiplayer experience, you might have 2 totally different experiences playing this game.
Yeah, and actually we designed it to be a multiplayer experience primarily, but of course, like you have to think about the single player experience as well. So one thing that we ended up doing is that the characters that you end up helping in the game, so regular NPCs, once you complete a quest for them, sometimes you have the opportunity to recruit them into your squad. So even if you're just playing by yourself, you can find these NPCs. They will have their own unique weapon, and you can recruit them in a squad and use them and actually progress through the game as if you were playing with your friends. And even if you're playing with one friend, you can then still complete your squad with some of the NPCs that follow you around.
That's awesome. Now, with It Came From Space, I believe you guys self-published that one, correct?
Well, we kind of like did it all a little bit. We started out self-publishing. We ended up with a publishing partner for consoles. So it was a mix of everything. But for From Space, we knew that self-publishing part is super difficult to get right in an already crowded ecosystem. So we had the goal of finding a partner that could help us really get the game to a place where it needs to be, help us with quality assurance, with localization, with marketing and promotion. So we ended up signing with Curve Games from the UK, who are our publishing partner for From Space on all platforms.
I was talking with the developer a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about kind of that really interesting relationship between a developer and a publisher. Did you approach Curve? Did Curve see your game, and that's how they kind of found it, or what happened there?
Yeah, so you have to realize that if you're an indie dev, and if you're setting out like getting your new game, your prototype under the attention of publishers, you're talking to dozens and dozens of publishers. Like 50% won't even respond to your email. Like another 25% would probably immediately say this is not for us. So you get a lot of no's before you get even one maybe. I think the good thing is that with Curve Games, the person who signed us there, him and I had been talking about From Space when he was in a previous position where unfortunately he wasn't able to sign us there. But when he moved to Curve Games, he reminded, hey, there's this game still out there that I really loved. I couldn't do any. I wasn't in a position to do something with it back then, but he was at Curve Games, so he quickly onboarded us there. So sometimes it's also about just a little bit of luck and the right timing.
I'm very fascinated by this kind of whole world that we now live in, because if you look like pre-pandemic, right? Like when a developer wanted to go get their game out there, they would go to conventions, they would go out and show it to the audiences, or South by Southwest or PAX or something like that. Nowadays, with you had almost like 2 to 3 years where there was none of these conventions. E3 didn't even exist. Did that make that whole process more complicated for you?
Actually, yeah. So, fun story. I was at PAX East in February 2020, and this was basically in the week where the president announced that the borders would be closing. And I was supposed to go to PAX, go back home for my son's birthday, and then head over to GDC, which was like first week of March. So that didn't end up happening, but I had publisher meetings lined up for GDC. Like, I was ready to talk to so many people in person about From Space, and none of that ended up happening. But one of the parties that I already met at PAX was Google, the people from Stadia, and they continued having the conversation about From Space, even though everybody was in lockdown. Yes, it was more difficult. Yes, it took more time, but they believed in the title, and they were actually the first partner to onboard From Space, to believe in From Space, and they played a big role in making this game a reality.
That's one of the questions I had for you, because I play a fair good amount of games on Google Stadia, and It Came From Space was available on Stadia. That whole interaction, I guess, that's kind of what led to that game coming to the platform? Yeah,
it was really a matter of demonstrating, or like doing a demo for It Came From Space and Aderbrains at PAX, showing a video of a visual prototype that we already had going for From Space. And the person at Stadia who I was in contact with at the time, he convinced his team that, hey, this team is building something new, but it's really cool. We can bring 2 games to the platform, and they signed us as part of the Stadia Makers program, which is a collaboration between Google and Unity at the time.
When you look at that time period, I think we're going on almost 3 years of Stadia here in a little bit. That has to have been kind of a big change from a developer's perspective. I mean, what has porting been like from It Came From Space to now From Space? What changes have happened there?
Well, Because of our co-dev experience, we've always been a multi-platform developer. Like we have a lot of multi-platform technology in-house. We were already doing PS4, Xbox, Nintendo Switch games. So to us, a new platform was basically just adding a new platform to the mix. Stadia does a few things a little bit differently than the other platforms, but like I still recall that we were very impressed with how robust their development pipeline was, how well the team understood like the importance of supporting the developer and getting their game certified for the platforms, and like it really depends on each project on how difficult that is. So like for some games it's a breeze, but for some games it's very difficult. Even if, especially I think if you have your own proprietary engine, it can be quite a difficult task to port your game. Fortunately, for us there was already like a happy marriage between Unity and Stadia at the time. So a lot of work was done there, and we could basically say, hey, let's add Stadia to our multi-platform library that we were developing, that we constantly develop in-house. And I think we just had a lot of fun with it. Actually, at a point, I think we were testing more frequently on Stadia than any other platform, just because it's so easy to spin up a new build and to test it on like no matter what laptop you're testing with. Like I have a laptop that I take with me to the office, but it's basically good for some emails, some spreadsheets, and that's it. But I can test the latest build from space on there at 60 frames and without any hassle. So yeah, that's something that's very convenient for a developer, and especially if everybody's working remotely. You know, like that was it, because all these dev kits, if you're like PS5 came out, those dev kits, those are expensive, and you can't lug them around. They only work at the office. They're they're IP restricted. It's very difficult, and Sony became lenient on those policies. But for Stadia, like everybody, it was like having your dev kit with you at all times.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that when you look at cloud gaming, it's hard, not from a developer perspective, but also from a gamer perspective, not to get excited at the future that's coming. Like all these cloud gaming platforms starting to pop up as apps on your television. I transport back to that 12-year-old gamer, and I'm like, wait, I don't have to convince my parents to go buy this $700 console. I can literally just play this game whenever I want. It's a very, very exciting vertical inside the gaming industry right now.
And I think it also shows how difficult it is for a new kid to like on the block to get a piece of that pie, because even with a proposition that good, it's still so difficult to convince people to go for a new platform versus the one that they've been playing with for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we've seen it a bunch of times. I think Google is probably more successful at it than most. But even if you think about how difficult it was for Microsoft to get into the business, early 2000s, launching Xbox, nobody in Japan bought the platform. Basically, nobody in Europe bought Xbox. It was an American-only platform for a while, and like. It took them 15 years to really get to the point of like, oh hey, we are now on equal footing with PlayStation in this market.
And I would even say, from an Xbox perspective, within the last 3 years is when Xbox has kind of really solidified themselves as like and a lot of it has to do with Game Pass. I think Game Pass revolutionized Xbox for what they're doing.
That's an absolute brilliant move.
Yeah, I'm curious because that new kid on the block theory. I mean, that's a huge conversation we can dive into, but if you were in the position of introducing a brand new console or a brand new platform, what would you do to kind of get people interested in that?
To be honest, if I'm a hardware manufacturer, I would think twice about investing in a new thing that I need to set right next to my TV. Like at one point I was convinced that there wouldn't be a new PlayStation 5. Now I wasn't correct on that one, and then I was convinced that it would never have a CD drive. It would only be like a digital platform. So none of those ended up being true. Maybe for the next time. At this point, I'm I think that this is probably the physical iteration, and the next iterations are all going to be just cloud-based, all services. And I think that's, to be honest, I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I've not been great at winning those bets in the past.
No, I'm fully with you there. Like, people are talking about like a PlayStation 5 Pro or an Xbox Series X whatever, and I'm just like, why? Like, why? That leap doesn't seem like it's needed at this point. And I don't know any games right now that are being made in 8K, so it's kind of hard to justify that next jump. But I don't know. I'm just a guy that films a show in his garage at the end of the day. So
I think that the race, like for the highest resolution, is not as interesting as the best quality. Like, you already see, like even games that are that deliver a great full HD picture versus a 4K image. To me, with a 65-inch screen at home that I sit like 6 feet away from, it's difficult to see. And I think it's more about image quality, and that's where the direction is going. And I don't think we'll be talking about if a game supports native 8K in the near future, because it's just useless. It's not a real topic. It's not a thing.
Now, you guys just got done dropping a brand new trailer for From Space. It kind of goes into a little bit of the multiplayer mechanic, but there was also a little bit of a big announcement for you guys at the end of this trailer with your release date. Do you mind sharing with everybody watching the great news of when we can play From Space?
Yeah, the news is finally out, but everybody will be able to play From Space on September 29th. This year, so very early in autumn. It's coming right up. The team is still heads down working on those final changes, making sure that we dotted all of our I's and crossing all of our T's. It's very important to us, but the date has been set, September 29th.
I know I, for one, am very excited, but I know members of our community are also very excited for this game. And if you're cool with it, we kind of composed some questions from the community that they had for you via Discord and Twitter. So you go with jumping into them?
Absolutely, go ahead. Perfect.
Raven Anime over on Discord asked, how many levels will be in the game, and can we expect DLC?
Okay, so if you just count the number of different maps in From Space, there are 6 different maps. But they get increasingly bigger and more widespread. So it is just a number. But you're looking at a good, I think, 15 hours of average time to play if you complete the game. I think if you take a little bit more time with your friends to explore some things, do some more side quests, you're easily adding another couple of hours there. In terms of DLC, we fully plan to continue supporting From Space with new content, with updates, with additional game modes into the future. We are now actually in the process of finalizing those plans with our partner. But yeah, I'm very excited and very happy that it looks like we'll be continuing the development of From Space.
Endymion over on Discord asked, why did you remove the demo for From Space from Stadia?
Good question. So this is about, a lot of it is about not wanting to confuse people. So the demo we had last year was also what the project looked like last year. We had some major steps up in terms of the characters have now been finalized. The visuals have now been finalized. We have made changes to the weapons, to a lot of the UI, and basically we wanted to make sure that people don't confuse the demo with the product that is coming up at the end of September. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, to avoid that scenario, we decided to take down the demo a couple of months ahead of the game launching, so there will be so everybody has like a fresh view of the game by the time that we release new screenshots or new trailers or the new store page goes up. So it's primarily like a decision. Having said that, we never intended the demo to be live indefinitely. Like, we always intended it to be part of our proof that From Space is worth pursuing. And actually, we were able to use so much data to convince our partner, that hey, people are really into From Space. We were able to show how often the demo was played, how long people were playing, that we had repeat plays. We even had achievements in the demo, so we were able to demonstrate how many people actually went for 100% completion there. So unfortunately, we had to take it down. But yeah, it was part of the plan.
Yeah, that demo, man, it accomplished what you were trying to do because it captured my imagination. I was like, oh, I can't wait for this full game. So kudos to you and your team over there.
Thank you.
Ryzak over on Twitter asked, when was the last time in real life that the developer used a payphone?
Oh man, okay. This had to be like, this is probably like early to mid 90s. I was probably like calling my mom to pick me up from somewhere where either my bike had a flat tire or I wanted to go home or something. I don't know if people even know what calling is, but it was a way for you to use a payphone without paying, and your mom would get a message saying, "You're getting a call from Remco. Do you accept the charges?" And it was like ridiculously expensive. So my mom was always really angry with me when I did that. But it's the only way I could call home at the time.
Yeah, and if you were really clever, when it asked you to say your name, you would just put the whole message saying, "Mom, I'm stuck here. Come pick me up."
Yeah.
Now, for those of you that aren't aware, payphones in the demo were how you kind of created the multiplayer experience. Is that still going to be kind of the main way when the game launches?
Yeah, of course. Like, there's the cool thing about From Space is that it's a drop-in multiplayer. So even if, like, let's say you get home, you launch the game, you're playing for 10, 20 minutes, a friend comes online, instantly they can just join you right then and there. If they've joined you before, they will just rejoin with the character that they had previously, and you're continuing your quest, no problem. So, but also, like, we put the phones there for you as a reminder, hey, this game is best enjoyed with friends. So if you're playing, you walk up to a phone, you're like, oh hey, there's actually a friend of mine who's online, let's just send them an invite because they can just drop in and start playing with me. So even though you can just always pull up that menu to invite people, the payphones are there as a quirky reminder of, hey, like, call a friend and make sure you don't go about this alone.
Well, that kind of leads us perfectly into the next question, because Savoy Smith over on Twitter said, any potential for random people to join your session versus having to invite?
If they are friends, they can actually join at any time. So From Space does not have matchmaking. And the reason for this is that we kind of like expect people to already know each other as friends to play with each other. We also think that people are probably already either on FaceTime or on Discord or on whatever tool, just already in a voice chat with each other. Like, you're already hanging out, you're already doing something, and then you go into From Space. So there's no, we didn't spend time building elaborate in-game chats or like voice communication. There's just a lot of additional work for a small team like ours to do. So we just really focused on those friend mechanics. Having said that, with Stadia, you can actually just generate an invite link, which you can just post to Twitter or whatever public platform. And on Stadia, people can actually just join you even though they are not friends. So if you're like, oh hey, I'm starting a From Space game, and there's I got room for 3 more people to join me. Here's the link. On Stadia, there's a way for even for strangers to join you. And I think as soon as you're in the lobby, you can then do the voice chat. So yeah,
the future is a crazy thing.
It is.
Yeah. These next 2 questions are kind of hand in hand, so we're just going to combine them real quick.
Yeah.
Quack on Discord wants to know what game modes will be available, and then Heather Fields over on Twitter says, any plans for a Battle Royale mode? So is it just the campaign mode that we're looking at here with From Space?
Yeah, so you have to remember, like, building a game is a lot of work, and we're very happy that we've been able to complete this campaign mode that we hope you all will love. But yeah, new game modes are definitely something for our post-launch plans, something that we are working on. Just for Battle Royale, because, okay, so From Space is a peer-to-peer networking game, which is to me, that's good, because even like 10 years down the line, if none of the services, like if services go away, you'll still be able to connect with a friend. As long as you're able to receive an invite, you'll be able to join a game. We don't depend on any third-party service for the game to work. But that also means that we're kind of limited in the amount of people that we would be able to bring into the game. Now we've tested it with more than 4, but at the moment the limit is 4 because we're also communicating like a couple of hundred aliens and a bunch of other things that are happening in the game world, and we don't want to complicate the game too much to a point where your bandwidth is a deciding factor in the amount of fun that you'll have. So from space, it isn't very. Your connection is less important. Like, it's not like a shooter where if you're over 50 milliseconds of latency, you won't be able to compete. Like in From Space, you could have like 250, 300 milliseconds of latency, and you'll be able to play the game just fine with someone. But you are still communicating directly with another person, which means that there's a limit to how much data that we can send there. Now, like if we become really successful, like the options are endless. But for now, I don't think a battle royale mode is the type of mode that we'll be doing after we launch. But I do think we have some very exciting things that we're playing around with.
All right, and final question is from Joss Plays over on Discord. Did Stadia Pro benefit your company, and are you happy with the results of It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains during the period that it was on Stadia Pro?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I'll tell you why. So It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains, it had a minuscule marketing budget. So basically, Stadia Pro got us in a position where people would see other people play. They would try out the game themselves, because if you're on Pro, it's just like press a button and you'll be able to try out yourself, and then people really start to like the game. So for It Came From Space and Ate Our Brains, Stadia Pro was really successful, and it was something that helped the development of From Space, and it made moving the game to Stadia worthwhile. And I think that Google now has made a very, very interesting business model where basically they encourage you to create a game that people revisit, that people try out over like several sessions, multiple days, they come back to. And actually, it also encourages developers to think about, how do you update your game? How do you stay relevant for your audience? So I think it's a very, very healthy mechanic that they came up with.
If someone wants to find out more about From Space or Triangle Studios, where should they go?
You can. Best thing you can do is check out @FromSpaceGame on Twitter. There's a lot of information there. Whether you are playing on Steam, whether you're playing on Stadia, you'll be able to follow us from there. If you want to follow what the company is doing, you can also follow @Triangle Studios on Twitter.
Well, Remco, thank you again so much for coming on the show. I am beyond excited to jump into this game in September, and I wish you and your team last question for me. How many people on Triangle Studios were working on this game?
There's about 20 people working on From Space at the moment.
Well, if you could do me a favor and congratulate each and every single one of them on the game. It looks fantastic. I genuinely can't wait to play it in September. For everyone watching, thank you so much for checking out this week's episode of the Nerf Report. My name is Bryant. This, as always, has been the Nerf Report, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more content just like it, which who wouldn't, hit the subscribe button right there. And while you're down there, hit the like button. Maybe even consider becoming a Nerf Report best friend, just like the people listed down below did. In fact, don't you want to see your name there? I know I do.